Hey everybody, it's been a while since I've given one of these lectures. Uh, I think most of you know me who are here. If not, we can do a short introduction and I'll go into more detail later, also in the lecture as well. Right now, most of you are in Q2 from what I know, and I've been doing a lot of production coaching, which has been a lot of fun. But kind of today, want to talk about like practical production workflows for smaller game teams, not like giant AAA bureaucracy, which I'm used to. You know, coming from AAA and also working on animation films, which kind of uses the same kind of workflows in general. But also, we're not going to cover a lot of complicated management theory as well. We're going to cover like real workflows that kind of help teams stay kind of organized, communicate clearly, reduce chaos, and actually finish games. Because how many of you here have had the idea for a game, wanted to develop the game, got only to a prototype, and never finished? Show me your hands. Who's guilty? In chat. Or not? Okay, Panu. Okay. Me too. Yep, so we've all been there. We've all been there. Game production is very chaotic. It can't be if it's not organized well. So, one thing I've consistently seen across like creative projects, from games to film to animation, just in general, is that games, particularly, usually do not fail because people lack talent. We're all talented people here, right? Everybody knows what they're doing. A lot of projects fail because the project loses structure overall. You want to do a lot of things and you want to do them quickly, see results quick, and that's where things start to get chaotic as well. And honestly, this lecture is less about management and more about how creative projects kind of structure, creative projects kind of like survive development as well. And for a lot of you, during like Q2, especially the game lab teams, I've been going through and helping you understand like how to scope even tasks properly, how to groom them for user stories, and discussing story points and so on and so forth. And seeing a lot of great progress through there as well. So let's continue. So who am I? I was going to talk about it earlier, but we can talk about it now. For those of you who don't know me, I met a lot of you through NGS. I won't be able to come to NGS this year, so hopefully next year I'll be able to come and see you guys in person and see what progress you've made. But in the meantime, so you can always send me the progress of your game as well as a build, or if you have it on Steam, playtest that way as well. My background is a bit of a mix of technical production, pipeline, workflows, VFX, and animation, and mentoring developers as well from my professional experience. I have a lot of the work I've done kind of sits between like the creativity and the organizational part of things as well, where I'm helping teams and pipelines function under production pressure. Like, for instance, when I was at Blizzard, I was also working in triage, where I was coordinating things between departments, tasks, making sure things were getting done in our backlog as well, communicating between artists and production to make sure that we're meeting our deadlines. I did that in a lot of the film projects I worked on as well, that I've delivered as well. So a lot of the bigger studios kind of tend to have that kind of role where someone is put in charge of like, hey, they're the producers, and then there's production management, but then there's actually a technical artist who's very familiar with production, can speak to the team overall on how to like manage tasks and make sure that things are getting done and pushed forward as well. Then there's also that like me who can talk to producers, um, also who are managing the game budget overall as well. So like over time, I became like really interested in production workflows because I just kept seeing the same kind of thing happen. Once you worked on like several different games or several different projects, you kind of start seeing patterns where the things kind of fall through the cracks, sort of way. So, just out of curiosity, how many people here are seeing patterns now in their games when they're working on the game? Okay, where you can feel like, okay, we should probably pinch this now before it gets to the next step, sort of thing. Because, that kind of also is a great skill to have when you go into not just being an indie developer, but going into double A and also triple A as well. How many of you guys have you already came across that? I see a lot of maybes and yeses. Yep, should get better at it though. Yeah, it's a learning skill over time, to be honest. But everybody can. It's a skill where when you start like working in a place long enough, then you know definitely how to recognize this patterns as well. So as I was saying, right, creative projects, no matter what level, become chaotic and like very quickly without structure as well. So for smaller teams, especially, feel that pressure fast, and then things just start like piling up on top of each other. So that's kind of like what I have done, as a professional, where I've helped teams in that sense, and also worked as a technical artist, optimizing games assets for the better FPS that we all love and enjoy when we play games. So let me know if I'm going too fast, and then we can continue. So I'm guessing a lot of you also went through Jay's lectures also, since he's our production coach as well. And I've been helping more on the practical side with the actual setup of like transitioning with Hack and Plan or whatever production tools you guys are using as well. And kind of want to just kind of reiterate, what is production really, right? Production, when people hear production, they kind of get scared. They're like, oh, I don't want to deal with this. I just want to focus on the artwork, right? Like and also people hear production workflows, they often imagine like spreadsheets, meetings, producers, enterprise kind of big software. They're like, we don't really need that for our team. They get very overwhelmed very quickly, but it can actually be very simpler. When you were starting your games, for the audience in the chat, when did you feel like, hey, we actually need organization? Just kind of curious. Did someone tell you, or did you just kind of figure it out yourself and then started implementing things? What was your process on that? You recruited a team of 22 volunteers across 3 time zones, and then I understood that I need to get a better production as it became your 8 to 20 job. Oh yeah, that work that can make things interesting for sure. I like to kind of hear your stories as well when I do these kind of lectures. Make them more interactive. You have done project management in a previous game project, so I try to utilize those in the current team with what you've learned, and it's all about like what you learned as well. That's a very good thing that you said there, Pana, because a lot of project management, it's like what you learned from the previous project or the previous task and how to improve it to make it more efficient as well. But and that can be implemented, quite quickly as well into your current workflow. But you've learned already so much more thanks to this program and thanks for everyone. No problem. I'm glad that we're there to help you out to learn a lot of these kind of things because it is a scary world when it comes to project management in general. Also, waiting. I see some typing faces or the typing thing, so we'll see what we have to say and then we'll move on to what I want to kind of discuss in a bit. But yeah, keep on asking your questions in chat, and we can make it very interactive as well. I think our production flow is a bit all over the place. Everyone having their own to-do list and such. We do have some Excel sheets for stuff, but we would benefit for having a proper system set up. And after like 5 years into the project already, well, I think I've already started to work with you guys, Avion Studio as well, and we can get into that later to discuss how to organize things in a more efficient way. I'm going to hear efficient a lot because that is what project management is, and that is what I do, is I make things efficient. So, where was I? So, production is actually much simpler than what I talked about earlier about the spreadsheets, about the meetings, producers, and enterprise software, right? Production is kind of like what I have here on screen that you guys are seeing, is how basically the work that you're doing moves through a project. It's the overall structure that helps teams move from the idea, the prototype, development, to finishing the game as well. And I think we'll get more into it later on how kind of things get very disorganized during the idea, prototype, and development phase as well, and unstructured. A lot of teams suffer from doing too much prototyping, not really figuring out what the idea is, and then they don't realize, hey, our idea is actually not really concrete yet when they do the prototype. And in my opinion, in some ways, it benefits where you can make the idea concrete and make sure like, hey, this is going to be a fun core game loop. This is going to be a fun game that I want to work on. This is the type of game that I would want to play as well. So that's where early on during the production side of things, that even early on in the idea phase, things start with structure, making sure that things can feel concrete. Like, a lot of times people get confused also where production is project management. Production is really not project management. Production can also be production is also survival skills for game projects. Maybe I've also worked in too many small teams, but sometimes that's what it feels like. But for a lot of the bigger teams that I've worked on, even in AAA, it is about survival skills as well for a lot of projects in general. Learning how to adapt into any situation that where the project turns into. So, as I talked about before, right? Production kind of one of the starts with that idea. One of the biggest mistakes, right? Um, beginners, beginner teams make, or just teams in general, they think the production starts after the idea is complete. Wrong. Production actually starts with the idea itself. And that's when you start organizing how you want to approach making the game, from the type of production tools that you need, from the software that you, what engine that you're going to do this in to make it easy. Because the type of engine that you also choose during the idea phase plays a huge impact. How much of the engine do you actually know, versus do you actually do you think you know the engine as well? So yeah. So but yeah, and as I was saying, production actually just begins at the moment that the idea begins, because the idea itself defines scope, complexity, like I was saying, workload, technical risk, and art requirements, and development time. Also, once that idea is concrete, you're able to work on the scope a lot easier. If the idea is too grand, then the scope becomes a lot harder to control. Once the idea is concrete, the scope becomes more manageable, more, easier to follow through in the day-to-day tasks that you assign yourself during the game development process. So I'm sure like a lot of you that are working on your games right now, tell me in chat, how many iterations of the idea did you go through before making it concrete, saying, hey, we can actually make this game with the current skills that you have, with the current engine knowledge that you have, and the overall skill? How many iterations have you guys gone through? Well, I'm not really saying if it's a sprint or as an iteration. I'm just talking about the idea iteration of like the game that you kind of wanted to make, because that idea kind of affects the overall production, like I said earlier, as well. You currently have iterated the ideas maybe about 4 to 5 times, and see, that's exactly what I mean. You keep coming up with different things during the ideation phase of game development as well, which slows down the entire production process. Your core idea has remained the same, but like heavy iteration on all systems separately, like 2 to 3 times on each. Okay, I like that. That's a good way to approach it as well, where you have the core idea stay concrete, but your iteration kind of happens around the systems that you've developed. So that's a really good way to approach it. So I like that. Well, I joined the team later, and the idea was kind of set when I joined, but after maybe like 3 to 5 iterations. Okay, okay. So see, it does happen. What I said exactly just kind of happens even with your development process as well. So, and it happens on a AA level and a AAA level also. So that's why I say, like, the first production task is defining the idea. Enrique is saying, as the idea, maybe 3. We scoped away base building and creative collection, but our idea is quite close to the core idea we planned on. Cool. So, this just kind of goes to show that how important knowing what the type of game you want to make is a good foundation for the rest of the development cycle during the production process of the game. Okay. So, one thing I kind of discussed a lot about the teams, a lot with all the teams so far, is about like tasks and how to define tasks also during production. Tasks are very kind of like how you want to make it, what needs to be made, and what needs to be, done, like what needs to be working as you make it, right? And one thing I strongly recommend is kind of like start thinking about tasks very early as well, even during ideation. So like when you're writing the story or when you're writing the thing, like how do I complete this? What do I think about it? You don't have to like think about it in too detail, but just like start thinking about that as well, because you don't need a giant schedule immediately, but because tasks reveal the real size of the game, and it kind of affects like what you do on a day-to-day basis, how your sprints are kind of managed overall as well. Tasks really kind of expose the production reality. So I'm going to ask another question. Like I said, I want to kind of keep this fun and interactive. Is that how do you guys feel about the scope of your games so far? Do you think that it's getting too much? Do you think the tasks are way too big for what the scope of the game is? And how have you handled your tasks on a day-to-day basis? If I'm quiet, it's because I'm waiting for people to answer in the chat as we go. So we're talking about how tasks also can expose production reality. We got into the speed with 2 members working a lot more hours in May, and then just at the same time learning how to track burn down. Ricolota says. Interesting. I feel like the current tasks, Pano is saying that I feel like the current tasks are at least in the scope for the release this year. Okay. Cool. So I'm glad you guys are kind of thinking about those kind of things. It's very important. We were tracking tasks instead of PBIs before Jay's lectures, and those and doing Shared PBIs has brought a lot more teamwork. Yep. I'm glad. Our backlog is still a long list of tasks. Oh, yes. And we've discussed that as well in our one-on-one lectures also, as well as I. So, for example, I hear what you guys see on the screen is I kind of laid out some sort of like example tasks, like examples of what some sort of tasks would be. So, let's take something that sounds simple like make combat, right? That's very vague. It's not very thought out. It's not very well groomed of a task, in my opinion. That sounds like one feature, right? You probably have a lot of tasks kind of similar to that. So think about that. Like when I say a task, like I think about what's in your game project that's also probably in your task backlog. Hey, why does this sound vague? Think about those kind of things when you look at look at those tasks later. So, but production immediately starts like revealing the hidden work as well, like movement, shooting, hit detection, enemy AI distributing in the type of game you're making, reload systems, UI feedback, balancing audio, testing also as well. What are you saying, Millie? Millie? Yeah, vague tasks that make cost estimations high. Oh yes, that is a very big thing as well. So, yeah, we always want to be careful with the way grooming works, and this is why, also in general, that you do have these kind of meetings during production, like grooming, planning, stand-ups, you know, as well. Those three things are like the core of a production meeting as well, and really help like flesh out ideas of what things need to be done on a week to week sort of basis as well. So as I discussed, like these kind of tasks are just kind of vague overall. This is one of the biggest lessons in game production is like to make sure that things are understandable, people know how to tackle these issues, that they're defined well before they start, so people can just understand what problem they're solving as well. And then because the idea always sounds smaller than the actual implementation is what I'm getting at as well. Hopefully that makes sense. The idea is small enough, right? But the tasks become larger. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay. Let's move on. Second. My mouse is acting weird. So, another one that is interesting, where I've also talked about it with multiple teams, is about the hidden complexity of work. This happens a lot. It happens professionally as well. I'm like really surprised at like how things get very complex for no reason. Always happens on every project. It's just you work with different people. Different people have different ideas, and then we always solve it, and then everybody's happy. It's always a funny thing to me. So, like, even small features contain like hidden work, right? Like, how many of you? I'm kind of curious, especially for Neon Coco. I think some of you are here because how many of you guys in your team, Neon Coco, think that like you've worked on your feature, but it then became more complex than it needed to be? Because I feel like some you guys are working on some complex things as well within your game, and also others. How many of you in chat think that, like, hey, this is a small feature, but it became complex overall. So Auntie is saying that we've had to scale down on some features after prototyping and testing them for sure. Yep, that's the thing. You kind of described it pretty well, Auntie. Several people are typing. It took so much time to make a simple core feel like polished, but then we had to cut down on base building layer. Yep. And then Miko from Evian is saying it happens all the time, I'm afraid. Oh yes, it happens all the time. You think you solved it in one project, but then it'll always happen in the next project also. Auntie is saying some over designing and over engineering, but playtesting always reveals it's too complex. Then just iterate towards simplicity. Yes, that's actually a perfect thing, Auntie, that you're saying, because for personal projects versus like a, a job, sort of not a job is the wrong word, a game, right? Personal projects, I always feel like you can always over engineer to learn from things, right? Like for my personal projects, I always over engineer because I just want to learn it. It's like then I can learn how to make it simpler for later and apply it for other projects as well. So for personal projects, that makes sense, but just be careful about over engineering it so that way you stay on schedule with your sprints as well, and you're able to meet the delivery date or the build date or demo date that you have coming up as well. So Ville is saying that like at the moment, like working on the dialogue system, the task was just like basically a text box and iteration. But until I realized that it need to be a backend to support more than just one use case. Yep. Another perfect example. Panu is saying climbing in our game became much more complex because we needed to create a new state for the climbing in the state machine and then handle the state changes correctly with the current states to climbing. And because our 4 weeks off first 2 weeks features became 10, oof, yeah. And then when we planned to do 2 week features, 2 weeks polish, oh yeah. So what's the pattern like among us, right? What can tell what the pattern is? Until you implement it sometimes, or until you just try it, then you realize, oh, okay, this is actually going to be a lot harder. What that says is writing it down or thinking about it is not always going to help in the task preparation or the sprints, but also implementing it as well. So, for example, like it's great that you guys had these experiences already, which I'm like happy that you have been able to solve as well. For example, something like adding a door, right? Let's overly generalized example in general. It's like we add a door. Sounds simple, right? But then suddenly production reveals we have to we have to do model, we have to do textures, we have to do collision, we have to do animations, we have to add sound effects, and oh my god, things are just adding up. It was just adding a door. Why is this becoming more, harder than it is? Then it's interaction logic, safe state behavior, also testing, and then bug fixing, and you guys kind of ran into that as well in chat, saying that hey, we've especially trying to implement this, like what I said about the dialogue system, turning into some more things that he didn't realize that had to be done. So when that kind of happens, right, one important thing to do during production is pause. Don't go into fixing everything that you need to do when you run into those things as well. That's not how you kind of want to really approach your workflow. That's chaotic. What you want to do is stop, write down what you discovered, and make those into issues. Make them into, hey, I came across this when working on this. I think it needs to be an issue before we move it on. Say this is a blocker, and then talk about it with the team. Talk about the producer. Talk about with like who's helping you organize your tasks as well. Saying, hey, this is a blocker, and this is why those meetings I talked about earlier, like a stand up, is very important as well. Because one small feature can become 10 production tasks very quickly. And from what you've written, you've also ran into that as well. Now, just out of curiosity, how many people are here are doing your stand-ups and those kind of meetings that I mentioned on a day-to-day basis? Rika saying we just started voluntary stand-ups, 2 to 3 sprints. I'll go and voice. Okay, and also don't forget, stand-ups don't have to be voice or just formalized meetings. Stand-ups can be like whenever you're finishing your work, or halfway through the day, you write in your Discord or any sort of communication channel that, hey, this is where I'm at. This is where I'm blocked. I think we should talk about these kind of things, and then that way, people who have the decisions to make decisions and unblock things can figure out how to plan those into the tasks for the upcoming sprint and work as well. Yeah. Okay, so Billy is saying that you have a stand-up channel where people post they have the done/working. So then we also have weekly meets. Okay, cool. We tend to post quick screen capture videos of the progress to keep everyone in the loop, and then escalate issues into meetings separately if needed. That's an interesting take. I haven't done that kind of way before. It's usually just like you're working on your own, but it's also a good way to visualize and show things. Hey, what's working and what's not working as well. During it, we have a setup. We have set up a webhook on our Yari from Neon Coco is saying that we have set up a webhook on our Discord server that shows all commit messages, so we can see live what people commit. Okay, cool, nice. And sorry if you guys heard my dog there. Dog's barking. Cool. So, yeah, those are always kind of nice features to have when you do have the Discord server or things like that, where the commit messages so you can see live what people commit as well. So communication is very important. Figuring out how things can get complex very quickly is also important as well. Speaking up of how things can get quickly before they get complex is also important. It's a skill, and it takes time. I like to call it the bullshit sensor that I have. I can smell it before a mile away before it becomes, problem as well. Pano is adding more. We have devlogs and weekly meets at the moment, trying to find a good way to communicate with everyone better because of other work and studies within the team. Okay, we can always discuss that as well, Pano, later. So, kind of want to talk about the just making sure we're okay on time. Kind of want to talk about the practical workflow pipeline now, right? So, what you're seeing right now, this workflow is kind of intentionally lightweight. The goal is kind of not like talk about bureaucracy. The bigger the team, the more bureaucracy you kind of add in your workflow. The goal is ultimately about reducing chaos, which has been the kind of the thing. We want to walk through each stage: idea, concept, task breakdown, prototype, production planning, vertical slice, production, polish. And we want to always make sure that we're prototype before overbuilding. Test your riskiest assumptions first. Like, just out of curiosity with everyone here, how long were you spending on your prototype before you said, hey, I'm actually okay with this as a game? It feels fun. You know, it's a game that I want to work on and develop the features on. Enrico is typing. Just 1 second, and then we'll get to the next section. So let's move on, and then I can answer questions as we move on as well. We started with Rico Loda saying that we started with 3 weeks into a different game, and then on bootcamp decided to do a quick copy with one twist of a really small game, so we didn't much prototype this game. Okay. So these are all learnable moments as well. So I kind of want to talk about concept docs and prototyping right now. So depending on the type of a game that you're creating in general, a concept doc should stay small, usually like 1 to 2 pages maximum, right? How many of you guys created, like, let's say an idea document or concept document, and then went to your GDD? You forced our designer to make one pager back a while when the idea was still a bit shaky. That's good. It's always good to do that. Like, people kind of don't want to do the documentation part early on just because they feel like the game is not ready. But writing out exactly your thoughts and your actions before you kind of start, it's a very important skill. Yeah. And to think what a score is what Billy is saying from Hello Games. Yep. So basically, this 1 to 2 page maximum document, it should explain like the gameplay loop, pillars, visual direction, target scope, and what is not included as well. So whenever you start on a game, it's always good to include those kind of things as well. And it also depends on the game. So this is just a good generalization kind of list that I'm giving you. The not included list protects the project as well. So if you're very passionate about the type of game you want to make, you can get out of control. You know, keep it tight and don't over document also. And then also always prototype first. I know in Q1, You've all did a lot of prototyping, and I played, I think, a few of them already. And I was very happy to see the type of progress that you were making with the prototype as well. And you always want to prototype first before you're building the polished systems, and always make a quick prototype. Also, test the fun. It has to have. Remember, games are meant to be fun. Test the fun, test the risk, fail fast, and learn faster as well. Don't get stuck. And also, a big thing in production when you work on your games is about optimization. I can't enforce how you have to start planning optimization very early on in your sprints, in your backlog, just because it's a topic that you shouldn't really keep towards the end. It should be a topic that happens during the every build phase of the game development life cycle as well. One of the biggest mistakes kind of beginner teams tend to make, or just even in companies also overall, I think we know who we're talking about, make is that they tend to push optimization and say, hey, we can fix it later. Optimization is production planning also. And we want to be like building production assets before providing the gameplay works. So, prototype exists to answer, is this fun, right? And we talked about it earlier. Does the movement feel good? Is the gameplay readable? And this is all optimization. Optimization is just not, hey, is it running smooth, but it's also about optimizing the overall workflow within the team to make sure things work as well. And within optimization, tasks evolve as well, where you have to look at texture sizes, shader complexity, level scale, modular assets. These are all individual tasks that get made as you work also. So these would be created as user stories during the testing phase, saying, hey, this is what we want to see, example A, example B, example C. This gets made into a task. Then you assign story points to the task, saying, hey, what's the complexity level of it, and so on and so forth. So make sure you're thinking about optimization early on in production as well for each build that you do. How many of you are doing optimization right now? And have been doing it during your development process to make sure that it doesn't pile up later? Because it adds a lot. You're trying, okay. Just starting, I'm afraid. Oh boy, okay. Well, it's never too late to start. Just make sure it's organized properly when you do start, of like what you want to see for a build as well. You don't have to work on optimizing everything at once. When you plan your optimization tasks, make sure that they're broken down for the sprints also. We added assets, pooling, etc., but then we tried to optimize color change shader. We created more work, so went to less optimal, so we get it done with our skill set, okay? And then Auntie from Neon Coco saying we did an optimization pass like a month ago. Pretty happy about the FPS currently. Okay. Ville says just created a task to check performance after we get next demo done. Perfect. So I'm glad you're already thinking about it, and you can see how this affects production and planning and tasks overall in general. You don't do things at a random. You don't do things out of order. You do things in proper organizational structure so the team knows what's going on as well. Because like I've seen teams spend a huge amounts of time polishing systems basically before proving the gameplay itself was actually fun. Beautiful UI, detailed art, complex systems, and then the gameplay still doesn't feel good. So that's why things in order matter a lot. from the prototype to your weekly or bi-weekly builds, depending on your sprint schedule and production schedule. Cool. Just keeping an eye on the time. Okay. One of the fun things about production is the type of tools that we use. Kind of, in chat, what are you guys using in production? What tools are you using? I know I've been recommending Hack and Plan for most of the teams. I've heard of Linear as well, which was interesting. I took a look at. And then I really like Hack and Plan in general. It kind of like the free plan kind of gives everything that you need. Also, some teams are using GitHub projects also. Hack and Plan XL Miro, GitHub projects for the win. Oh, I've been using GitHub projects on my personal project quite frequently, and it's really nice actually. I've also integrated GitHub projects with AI. And don't be afraid to use AI in project management also. It kind of helps you write the user stories, plan those out, and I've actually had AI connected with GitHub projects to help me understand how I'm doing in a sprint, what my burn down rate is, etc. Where am I in the sprint? Am I falling behind? And those kind of things. So it's been really, really great to use like Claude or Codex even to do that as well. And it also can help create tasks and things like that as well. But AI is very useful for those kind of repetitive tasks, especially during production management and also just overall organizing things. I found it really useful for like GitHub projects in general. It just works really, really well. And it also worked really well with Jira when I worked I used Claude and Jira together at work, and it worked really well. So with production planning and tools, once the prototype proves that the game kind of works, right, production planning becomes a lot easier. We talk about, backlog and then priorities, milestones, dependencies, and then scheduling as well. And so now kind of the team starts to actually understand what the game requires going forward. And then you choose the tool to help you manage that also going forward as well. So once you've kind of you're starting, after the idea, the hack and plan, you start putting those things into backlog, you start putting those things into your GitHub projects, and start building that pipeline of data that you want to use as well. So one thing that we should talk about is sustainable development, because how many have you here have dealt with burnout? Especially because if you are crunching a lot, you are trying to push deadlines and you're trying to get into a certain way. You want to be sustainable during the production also. So production is also about sustainability, where you want to talk about within your teams about avoiding burnout, having visible progress, making achievable goals, which scope defines overall as well, and momentum as well. So most of you said yes in chat. When this really happens a lot when tasks become unclear. Teams feel overwhelmed very quickly as well. But visible progress improves morale a lot. This is why small completed tasks matter psychologically. Don't make a task to be big just to be big in general. Okay. Let's go a little bit more about communication and sustainability as well within teams, which is all part of production planning as well. In small teams, in general, Communication failures become production failures very, very quickly. Not only in small teams, but within big studios as well. Within big studios, you have small teams, basically. For example, an artist thinks that, hey, the level is final. Meanwhile, like, the programmer still thinks the gameplay systems are changing. But now suddenly, the rework increases, frustration increases, deadlines slip, and you kind of want to avoid that. And this is where the communication is very, very important, to raise flags saying, hey, and this is what I talked about way earlier in the talk, is about looking at pattern recognition and learning where things may get broken later down the road helps a lot as well. And then production workflows help reduce this confusion. And this is why setting up things properly and using the right tools is very, very important. So I think we're getting close to wrapping up here. And hopefully everybody enjoyed the talk and chat. It was really nice to kind of like chat with everyone as we did it as well. I kind of felt like I was streaming on Twitch and everything, and like talking to you guys as we kind of talked about production as well in general, instead of just me being a talking head. Made it more interactive, which I like. So if there is one thing I want everyone to remember, right? Production is not something you add later. Production is in the beginning. It happens when you start any sort of idea or project. Production starts at the moment the idea begins, basically. The first task is defining the idea. The idea defines the scope. The scope defines the production reality. Panu saying, in order to make this more Twitch-like, then we need more emojis here. Yeah, let's get more emojis as well. So I think we should make it more fun like that with more emojis. I would appreciate that. I actually have my own custom emojis that I used to make, like as well. But small teams succeed when they, keep the scope realistic, define the tasks early, and also the prototype before overbuilding, and communicate very clearly as well, and stay consistently organized. And honestly, good production is not about making development boring. It's about helping creative projects survive long enough to become real games. Also, so that's it for today's lecture.